Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is the man himself, Mr. Eric J. Morin.
Glad to be here. See, that was the second take. By the way, we did 2 intros. On the first take, I got this awesome, amazing 12 adjective intro. And this one, see, that's the second take. You get 1 word. That's all you get. But because Reese, I had a paper cup, so Reese didn't like my paper cup. So now we got an official Tower Leadership Cup, just so y'all can see it, just so y'all know. Now we're official. So let's just roll in this everything. By the way, these were kind of the best cups. I love these cups.
We'll put that on the blooper reel.
The blooper reel. That's right. We went straight to cut, and Reese is like, "Thanks for calling me out, Eric. Here we go."
Remember that's what you guys cups we bought.
Oh yeah, we bought these
ones that if you put them in the microwave,
the microwave exploded. Yeah, it was like our first year in business. Yeah, we first year in business, we got a discount on some coffee cups, and they were silver, which looked amazing. Just don't put it in the oven or the microwave. It just it'll blow. Yeah. I think we lost our microwave that way.
It became a debate on who puts coffee in the microwave.
Yeah, kind of gross, right?
It became a whole debate on, well, is it logical to do that, or should you just have hot coffee? Always, moral of the story is test the products before you make a quantity buy. Before you buy bulk, make sure you test them first.
But the first year of business, you'll if it says discount, you buy it. Just to make that clear.
Yes. Back in those times, it was like, yep, we need that. 20% off? Okay, that works.
That's right.
So what do you want to talk about today, Mr. Morin?
I'll go to a conversation that I had actually this morning and I had last night. Because I had one topic that I was going to talk about from a marketing aspect, but I'm going to do that next week. So remind me next week, I'll talk about this marketing topic. Which would be really good. But I want to talk about a wealth concept for a second, which is really important for people to understand. And it's interesting because I had this conversation last night and then I had it again this morning. So obviously it's sticking with me. And I'll tell you what made me think of it was a move that I've made, and then I think about moves that people make, and then how this deals with your wealth. So, and I'll tell you what I said this morning about it. There was years ago, I was listening to an old Tony Robbins. I don't know, it was probably a CD at that point or something. And one thing that stuck out, he talked about the 5 or 6 parts of behavior that are innate to humans, and he was saying that one of the number 1 needs of all human beings is certainty. Right? We have to be certain in life, and that's really important to the way we are and our own identity. Certainty around our families, certainty around our careers, the certainty around safety of our government and these types of things. Safety and security is really important, and so that's really important to know is that we have this need for certainty in our life. The challenge is we also have a need for uncertainty. So we also have this need for uncertainty that we get what they call bored, right? And so we have this certainty, but how much certainty can you take on before you're bored, right? Before life becomes not challenging anymore.
Yeah.
And my argument would be that entrepreneurs have a bigger tolerance for uncertainty, and that everyone, let's just call it because I'm naming it, I'm now going to go ahead and give my name on the Eric J. Morin scale of certainty, right? I just coined it. I don't know if it probably already exists, but anyhow, so you have the Eric J. Morin, right? The scale of certainty. And so now if you think about it, you'd have one end, which is all the way super conservative, right? They just want to show up every day. They want to do a 9 to 5. They don't ever want anything to change. They need complete certainty. They want to live well below their means. They don't want to buy anything that ultimately speaking that they don't need. And then you have all the way the other extreme, which is complete uncertainty, which is just, complete abundance mindset, complete going after everything, complete focus and goals. And then you have kind of somewhere in the middle and then all on the spectrum. And so I would argue that entrepreneurs at a minimum are center right. And that The challenge is, and why entrepreneurs? So a lot of times, if you'll see kind of the wealthiest people in America, you'll see people that are business owners, or you'll see people that are, major athletes, or some type of a surgeon or someone, it's usually someone in the medical profession, or a doctor, or a dentist, or, so if it's a dentist, it's got to be a dentist that owns multiple clinics and those types of things. It can't just be, you can't just be a one clinic typically. That doesn't mean you can't be in the top 1%. It just means I'm just talking about substantial wealth. And so when I think about this, I think about, okay, well then if that's the case, then, this is the Dental Wealth Podcast. So then how do you become really wealthy? And the thing is that you have to create more uncertainty in your life to become wealthy, which means that you have to be willing to take more risk, calculated at best, but more risk, because then there's more opportunity for reward. But the other side of that is then how do you counter that? So, okay, one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given is if you want to grow your net worth, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We've all probably heard something to that, right? We have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, which is what I'm talking about on the scale, is that you'd have to be uncomfortable. So then the question is this: as an entrepreneur, how do you manage both? How do you manage the need for certainty with the need for uncertainty? And if it takes uncertainty to grow your net worth, then how do you manage that? And I would say the way you manage that is cash position. And the more you're to the right of the scale, probably the less cash position you need, because from a confidence standpoint, you feel more confident to make decisions with less cash. But one of the ways you can counter this and make sure that you're getting what you want from a perspective of a return is having cash. I asked a group of doctors one day, I was in a room, and I said, tell me what the number one use of cash is. What's the number one use of cash? And we had a doctor look up to me and said, so he was obviously in a course at some point where they told him this, which is he had looked at me and said, confidence. Now, interestingly enough, he had like 8 or 9 clinics, and I think he sold them all off for some, giant number. And so isn't that interesting? And so he answered, and he knew, hey, cash gives me confidence. So cash provides certainty. And the more cash that I have, at least access to, maybe you don't need cash, but at least you have credit lines, or you have, maybe you've taken out a loan, but you put the cash aside, or whatever it ends up being. Or maybe you've got an investor partner that is willing to, commit a certain amount of capital, or whatever that ends up being. The more cash you have access to, the more risk you can take, or the more risk most people are willing to take. So for instance, if you make an investment because you have a need for uncertainty, right? We want to shake it up a little bit. We got a new challenge, the new thing, Matthew. We got to go after it. Well, then if you want to go make an investment or make challenge, then you'd have to argue, okay, well, yeah, but if the risk of this going wrong is that I lose everything, then I probably won't do it, because I don't want to lose everything. But if there's little to no risk, so I'll give you an example, a personal example. So last year I got a phone call. There was a house in Florida, and this is outside of business. I'm just kind of giving an example that everybody can understand. So there was a house in Florida. I got the opportunity to buy it. I think it was $200,000 for the house, and then it cost me probably $30,000-$40,000 to get the house up to. It needed a new roof and new kitchen and those types of things. And so let's just say in the whole house, I'm in $250,000. I think it was pretty close to that. And then now all of a sudden I sell the house. I think I sold it for like $390,000. Right, so pretty good deal, right? Even after real estate fees, that's a good deal. Now I never saw this house. Ever. I've never seen it. It took 90 days to get the whole project completed, and I got my cash back. So let's just say just to make simplicity, simple example here, let's just say after fees and everything, it's $100,000, right? $100,000 to the positive. Now, how many of those opportunities are there inside and outside of business? Well, a tremendous amount. But if I was worried about losing all that capital, so if that capital went sideways for a moment, if it just disappeared, we'd be fine. Tower Leadership would be fine. I'd be fine. The company would be fine. I mean, I wouldn't like it. I'd be upset. Like, by the way, I bought the house and then I didn't insure it for like the first week, and then that's when the hurricane was coming through. And so I can't make this shit up. So like the hurricane was coming through. God. And so I called my insurance company and right away, and I'm like, hey, can I insure my home? And they were like, you'll have to wait till after the storm, sir. We've got to hold on all insurance. Of course, I was like, great. This house is going to hit the ground, and I'm basically going to have a lot, And so that could happen. You could lose the whole thing, and that was a real scenario. But you think to yourself, like, well, if I had the confidence to know I'd be fine, and that if the hurricane had blown down the house, I certainly wouldn't have liked it, and I wouldn't have been happy about it, but I would have been fine. And so we need to find uncertainty, and we need to grow our net worth by finding uncertainty, and we need to be challenged, especially as entrepreneurs and dental entrepreneurs and medical entrepreneurs, and we need to be challenged. But the way we ultimately counter that challenge is cash. Would you not agree?
Yeah. When do you take the leap? So my big thing would be, all right, so we push doctors to get uncomfortable. I mean, that's the name of the game. You can't grow unless you get uncomfortable. So at what point, like, let's say you don't have any data, like you don't have any, like, because obviously when you make it uncomfortable, hopefully you've done your research enough to where you can make it a little less uncomfortable.
Sure.
But let's say let's say you're coming out of dental school right now and you're starting a business and you have to invest $250K. At what point do you just make the leap of faith? I think that's kind of the big thing to this question is like, okay, when do you, because a lot of times what we see, and this, doctors will paralysis by analysis. Well, they'll just overthink it, and they'll have to have all the data, and they'll have to make sure they do the research, and they have to get your opinion, Susie's opinion, their cousin's opinion, their nephew they haven't talked to in 6 weeks, their opinion before they make the decision. At what point would you encourage someone just to take that leap, just to challenge yourself a little bit?
That's good. That goes back down to the Eric J. Morin scale of uncertainty. See, I'm gonna get this damn thing. All right, so it's a good question. So first of all, certainty and uncertainty in the realm of all of us depends, right? And so uncertainty could be something very small for somebody else, but that feel very large for another person. Even entrepreneurship is difficult. It's hard. It's challenging. So it's like, that's not, you don't need to be an entrepreneur to be successful. So it's just one of those ones where it's like, what is risk? It might be that you're a W-2 employee, but then you invest it into real estate and you invest in other assets and you own, there's a lot of other ways to take risk. But to specifically answer your question about what you're asking for, and let me explain why people ask other people. Because they're looking for confidence. This is why we ask other people, hey, can you 100% guarantee me this is going to work out? Well, if it's 100% guaranteed, there's probably no return. That there's risk inherent in investments. That's the whole point. And so, Dan Sullivan would say that, there's 4 C's, that we make a commitment first. We make a commitment to opening up a dental practice or a new location. That commitment takes courage, and you just have to have courage to do it. You don't know if it's going to work or not work. You just have to have courage. And then you find the capabilities, or you build the capabilities within your circle of advisory. So you have a company like Tower Leadership, or you have another company, or you have, the person who can give you the capabilities to get it done right? To scale, to grow, to invest, to hire the right people, to pay people the right, all these capabilities that you need. And then it isn't until you get the results that then you have confidence. And then you could do it again, and as long as that next investment looked very similar to the first investment, you'd have a lot of confidence. You're like, I've done this before. It's the same socioeconomic background. It's the same criteria. It's the same everything. Why would I not? I would have confidence then. Now, if I had done it 25 times, I'd have a tremendous amount of confidence. And I would encourage the person that had done it 25 times to now push themselves to do it a bigger project or something different,
Yeah.
right? If they really want uncertainty, because if they really want to grow their net worth's already on a perfect track, and they would have to jump again and push themselves to discomfort and uncertainty to hit the next level of net worth. So unless they just want to keep steady Eddie on their course, and by the way, depending on where they are on the scale, they might want to. But so this idea of I'm going to have confidence. I mean, I was telling my kids. Funny, my daughter asked me a question and then I bored her very easily with the answer. So I'll try not to bore the audience with my answer. I guess she lost interest very quickly. So we were talking about stock portfolios. We were talking about individual equities. And for those of you who don't know, individual equity means an individual stock, buying one stock, buying Apple, buying Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and the reason why it's called an equity is because a stock certificate is equity. You're buying equity in a business. So Ray Dalio said that if you had every piece of data ever created, I mean, I'm talking about how the wind affects the grasshopper's wings and the migration, which would affect crop yields, which would affect, and how and then you correlate it with the precipitation and the lunar phases. I mean, every dang piece of data you possibly could get together, and you put it into a supercomputer, and it printed everything out. I think he said like the best case scenario, you have a 50% chance of picking the right stock. So the people that are like, I'm the greatest stock picker in the world, like Ray Dalio would say that that's ridiculous. Like you can't beat the pot. Yeah. You might have gotten lucky, but if you do it over a large enough sample size, I mean, unless you go obviously very conservative, you're not going to get the rate of return you're looking for, over a period of time. And so, so there's not, when we make investment risk, so when we make investments, and so this situation was like, how do we make a perfect investment? How do we have the complete confidence? Because, by the way, my son's portfolio in 90 days went up 22% when he did this project, so she's trying to get somewhere close. Is she going to get 22%? She's trying to beat him.
Knowing Aubrey, she's like,
the likelihood now, it's interesting because he was going through COVID, so he invested into Amazon and some other things he's smart enough to realize that there were certain businesses that were going to thrive during the time of COVID. She doesn't have that. Now, he is going to tell her that he is better and smarter and wiser and all this stuff, but it's just not true. It's not true. And if they both had portfolios over a period of time, they would probably would probably end up somewhere similar. Yeah. But by the way, he's not going to let his sister believe that that's the case. No. He's going to
he surprisingly, I thought he would have done the GameStop stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Grant would be worth more than all of us right now.
That's right. My son's sitting at
13 years old. Yeah.
But this is about investing with confidence. My point of saying this is this. Like, when you go, you're going to have a need for certainty. So what in your life has to be certain? What do you feel like that is so important for you have to have certainty around? And there's no right or wrong. If you ask 10 friends, they all have a different level, and they're at a different place on the Eric J. Morin scale of certainty. So there's somewhere in there, they all fall somewhere in that scale. So then you're asking 5 people who fall somewhere different on the scale of what provides certainty for them. Like, I have a friend of mine who is so conservative, like that he won't spend $1 like on anything. Like, he will. I read a book recently called Die with Zero. Well, he will not die with zero. He will die with a whole lot, because he'll never spend anything. And in fact, you would argue in retirement, his money will be compounding so fast, like he couldn't spend it if he wanted to. So he'll never really enjoy what he's put aside. So his certainty, because based on his childhood, he feels he has to have a level of certainty. I am a person who lives with this idea that even though I had very little growing up, if I lost it all tomorrow, I'd be fine. I'd just make it back again. I mean, like, I don't have that same need for certainty.
This is a good homework assignment for listeners. Go ask 10 of your friends. Just come up with something, and you can point them out on what level on the Eric Morton uncertainty scale, or what did you call it?
The Eric J. Morton scale of uncertainty.
The scale of uncertainty. Ask them, and just like a little case study for you, and figure out where they're at. So a great thing would be like, okay, so if we were going to go start a company tomorrow and it was a $250,000 investment, what would need to be in place for you to make that decision? And then ask them. Some people will be like, I'm ready to go. Some people be like, well, I need to make sure I have at least 6 months of expenses. I'm going to follow the, what's the guy's name? The guy that always says, pay off all your debt. That guy.
Oh, the Dave Ramsey.
I can't believe I just drove a blank on Dave Ramsey. Yeah. And there's some people that'll follow that method. Well, I have to have no debt. I have to have $250,000 in the bank, and I have to have a complete analysis of all this. You would put them far left on the scale. Then you'd have to have someone that's like, well, we just have to figure out how much it's going to cost for us to do this, blah, 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 a little bit over. Someone that's going to be like, let's do it, baby. And then someone that's like, I already got the cash, let's go. And do a homework assignment to see, because you will find people of all, like even just having conversations with my friends, I know where majority of my friends land on this spectrum. Like I know where they're going to be with any decision. It's like if you ever go with a group of friends to Vegas, okay, you're going to have one friend that's like on the craps table, like putting hundreds down, like, let's do it. You're going to have someone that's like, this is a $25 table minimum. Not too sure about that. You're going to have one person that rolls 3 hands and then they lose $100 in 5 minutes and they're like, I'm out. And they never gamble the rest of the weekend. Right. This is a test for you. This is literally how you find out what level of uncertainty or Eric J. Ward's uncertainty level scale. We're going to coin this and we're going to put it on. If you're watching on YouTube right now, this is going to be popping up on like flashing like Vegas lights.
the Eric J. Morin, that's right, scale of uncertainty. And where do you fall on the scale of uncertainty? Because it affects your entrepreneurial ventures moving forward. Now, it's not good or bad, but most likely the people that are most conservative will have the lower net worths. That's just a fact. And I don't, it's not, it's just, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. Now, you might also miss out.
Or it might take you longer.
Yeah.
Or it's just going to take you 3 times as long to get there.
But you also, like, you miss out on the heartache. You miss out on the 2 a.m., sleepless nights. You miss out on the tears, right? I mean, you miss out on all those things too, right? So because your certainty is much higher, then you don't have probably as many misses, right? Because it's like a portfolio. Like so very early in my life, I got to do a person's taxes, and that was very significantly, did very well for himself. And I remember seeing he was like, yeah, I lost $300,000 this year on that stock. I was like, I think I was like 21. I was like, oh God. I was like, yeah, but I made like $600,000 on this stock. And I'm like, what? That's like, it was like math to me that just didn't even make sense. And, but he understood the portfolio, and he understood that, that's kind of part of the game. Yeah. So overall his portfolio could continue to grow. Well, it's the same thing with your business portfolio, real estate portfolio, investment portfolio. The more you're willing to take those losses, the more you're willing to get the gains. Go back to your Vegas analogy. Okay, we've all been at the table, if you've ever gambled, and watched the guy throw out a bunch of money and win big. And you're walking around, you're like, woohoo, I won $300, and the I won 300,000, right? I mean, there's and you're like, and you want to put more money down, but you're like, I just don't have, that much courage, right?
Yeah.
I definitely don't have the confidence that it's going to work, right? And so this is the way it goes, and this is about building your own portfolio, your own wealth, and understanding, you take a minute to go look. What do I need from a term and from a life, to have certainty in my life? What is it that I need to have? What are the things that would have to be true for me to feel comfortable financially? And I'm speaking financially right now, but what would have to be true financially for me to feel really good and to feel like I can make decisions? And then in what areas am I willing to add uncertainty? How much uncertainty? And if you could figure that out, it can help you make decisions much quicker. And you're also going to ask a different question to the friend you say, hey, would you invest in this? You might want to ask that person, hey, let me ask you a question. From a risk standpoint, for you, what has to be true from a certainty standpoint? What has to be? You could ask that question to them and they'd be like, well, I have to. They start telling you and you're like, oh, well, that's not me at all. I'm okay taking some risk. And so for me personally, I came from nothing, So, it's funny. I talked to a really good friend of mine who's also successful, and we kind of joke one day because we both came from very, lower to middle income families, and so we we joked that, hey, we knew how to be happy at zero, so if we go back to zero again, we'll be all right. And so now I joke about that, but it's actually kind of true, right? So my kids what they've become accustomed to is different than what I became accustomed to. So they probably feel like they need to have a certain lifestyle to feel comfortable because they've never lived without. But because I've lived without, that probably affects and puts me in a different place on the scale of uncertainty. Because because of the fact that I realize it's not all about stuff and I don't really need that stuff and I could be happy with very little if I needed to, I'm willing to take more risk on the scale because I already know what it looks like to be broke. I can be happy being broke, and I'd be willing to do that and know, because I've had to build it all back up again, I know that I'll be okay. If the investment doesn't work out, I have the confidence to know, I'll be fine. So I'm willing to take more risk. That might not be you, but these are the decisions that are going to affect your wealth, and they're going to be the decisions that affect your net worth. And so knowing that you need some uncertainty and knowing that you need some certainty and knowing that you need both, if you can get great on understanding exactly where you fall, well, you can make decisions a lot quicker and you can create a lot more wealth, and you can do it in a shorter period of time.
Yeah. I think if you have big, ambitious goals, I think you go back to the root of what you're doing right now. So if you're driving in, you're watching this on YouTube, you're just listening in, think about what do you want, okay? And then figure out, you're going to have to get uncomfortable along the way. Like, the only way that you're going to get there, unless you just don't have ambitious goals, which you're probably not listening to this podcast if you don't have ambitious goals, think about what it's going to take for you to get there. It's going to be uncomfortable. Start labeling out, and you start saying, all right, well, how do I make this less uncomfortable? And at what point do I need to take this leap? What point do I need to start moving from the left side of the scale to the right side of the scale? What do I need to do in order to get there? Because if you just, that's part of the reason why we see the dental industry be the way it is. How a practice that's been around for 30 years only does, $1.2 million, and they never do anything. Like, they just never do anything more. The team even just buys into this aspect of, oh, well, I'm just a hygienist. I know I'm going to be capped at this. I'm just an operations manager. I'm just going to be capped at this. I'm just a front desk coordinator. I'm just going to be capped at this. And they buy into this idea because they all get comfortable. They all just want to be on the left side of the scale, instead of thinking, okay, if we just did X, that could move us. It's going to be a little bit more risk, but guess what? If we do it right, it's going to put us back into a level of certainty, but we're going to be on a different, column, a different, wavelength than down here. Because I think you progress. It's your level of uncertainty scale ends up having tiers. Then as you get promoted, per se, or as you increase your wealth, you start to a new tier, and you're just jumping. You're climbing a ladder. Because eventually you're going to get to a point where, you're making what you want to, you have the net worth you do, and you're like, all right, so I need to start scaling back from, being very risky down to getting more into certainty. So you have to figure that out. And if you're sitting in the car and you're thinking about those things, you have to understand you're never going to get a $10 million business. You're never going to get a $5 million business. Hell, you might not even be starting a practice unless you start moving more to the right on the scale. But when things go happen and they happen right, you start slowly creeping back to the left. You start creeping back to being certain about your decision. And then you need to readdress and say, all right, well, how do I start pushing back to the right? How do I start getting more uncertain until you get to a point where you have everything that you're wanting and you feel comfortable with it? And then you have to challenge yourself and say, all right, if there was going to be another level of uncertainty, what is that going to be?
And that goes back to I'm not a big fan of retirement planning for the way I look at things. I always want to grow my net worth and I want to grow my assets, but I don't really look at it from a retirement planning standpoint because I'm never going to retire. Because it's just not because my level of uncertainty, I need to be constantly jumping and changing and inventing and creating. And so the idea of sitting on a beach or even sitting in the living room or whatever it is every day, waking up and just staring at the walls with nothing to do all day, where's the closest cyanide pill? Like I just that's not for me. It never will be for me. It's not the life I want to have. But for a lot of people that, especially on the certainty scale, they that is perfect for them. They're just like, oh, this is great. I just, and so then they need to get there. And then you need to know when you're around people around you where they fall. And your team oftentimes will fall more to the left of center because they don't want to take on the risk, the challenges, those types of things. You'll fall more on the right. And then you'll notice that the most successful entrepreneurs fall more and more to the right. And even people like Elon Musk, we were like, well, it must be nice to, this is always that, it must be nice. Go actually read about Elon Musk and go actually find out the challenges he's been through. Go look at the failures. I'm not talking about little failures. I'm talking about colossal failures. I mean, you're talking about uncertainty. This dude has been through so much stuff from an uncertainty standpoint, so much heartache, so much headache, and yet he keeps going. And you look at him and go, well, I mean, if I was a billionaire, I would be able to. Well, the reason he got there is because he's willing to take on so much uncertainty. And so you might not be.
I mean, this guy took on NASA. He took on NASA. Like,
I mean, he's
about being uncertain.
I mean, there's a picture of him standing over an exploded, SpaceX rocket. I'll never forget. Like just the complete. It was just complete disaster before they had the NASA contract, before any of this stuff. And they just you could just see them just heartache, just putting my everything into this and nothing's coming out of it. And so Tesla this year had one of the lowest, like literally it was like in the last 9 months, the stock has dropped like the most it's ever dropped. And one of the reasons why is because he gave up his patents because he's trying to do it for humanity, and like so now he's got a sinking stock, and he's trying because there's so much competition, and like there's so much uncertainty, and and you'll listen to him talk about Tesla and be like, if you want to go into a difficult business, go into the car business. It's one of the most competitive markets there is, and yet he took it on. He took on NASA. He took on the auto industry. He's taken on he's Neuralink, and he's drilling tunnels, and he's doing so much uncertainty because his willingness to take on uncertainty is so freaking high.
Yeah. And he would be why he's probably the richest person in the world.
That's right. I mean, his IQ probably doesn't hurt, but still, I mean, his so look, here's I think that the takeaway from a podcast like this is that like write out that scale, like think about this for a second and then just create a list. These are the things I need from a certainty standpoint, and then try to be more specific. I need this much cash. I need $500,000 in my business account. I need $1 million in my investment account. I need a piece of real estate paying me residual income. I need to know that I have my associates in long-term contracts. Whatever that is, that's my certainty. I need that. Because if you can get that, then you're much more willing to make decisions and choices that are uncertain. And it's through the uncertainty that you truly create massive amounts of wealth.
Well, I do know one thing that's certain. It's certainly a pleasure to be on this podcast with you, sir. That was my cheesy line of the day.
Certainly a pleasure.
Am I certain that you guys will get results? We talked about it yesterday. We have a doctor we're both excited to meet just listening to the podcast. She started a business, created an amazing organization. We are certain that if you share this, if you like it, if you listen to it, you go on YouTube, you watch it, you share this with friends, you discuss it, we are certain this will start changing the way you approach your business, how your business grows, and how you develop as a person. So, as always, Mr. Morin, thank you for being in the studio. This is a great one. You know what I'm excited for? Next week, if we're talking about marketing, I'm going to have to drink my coffee because who knows what rabbit hole we're going to go down for that one. Yes, so make sure you like, subscribe, share. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you, Mr. Morin.
Thank you, sir.